In 2016, in a quiet bar somewhere in Italy, two old friends met for drinks. One was Franco Vazza, an astrophysicist obsessed with mapping the large-scale structure of the universe. The other, Alberto Folletti, was a neurosurgeon fascinated by the intricate web of neurons inside the human brain. It didn't take long before their conversation turned into something a bit unexpected. What if the universe and the brain, two seemingly unrelated systems, were more alike than we ever realized? Vazza, teaching at the University of Bologna at the time, took the idea seriously. He started running the numbers. Using statistical models, he compared the network of galaxies in the observable universe with the neural pathways of the human brain. You'd expect chaos, randomness, but no. What he found were patterns, startling ones. The number of nodes, the density of connections, the way those connections are distributed, they weren't just similar, they were eerily close. And that sparked a question neither scientist could shake. If the universe is wired like a brain, could it also be thinking like one? It's easy to dismiss it as science fiction, but hang on. Before we roll our eyes, let's ask ourselves something. If the structure of the universe mimics the human brain at a fundamental level, then what else might they share? Thought, memory, maybe even awareness. Okay, maybe that's a leap, but keep that question in the back of your mind as we go further, because things are about to get weirder. Your brain has about 86 billion neurons. Each one connects to thousands of others, forming a dense, complex web of signals and electrical pulses. Now zoom out, way out. The observable universe contains roughly 100 billion galaxies, connected by filaments of dark matter and gas in a structure scientists call the cosmic web. See the parallel? In 2020, Franco Vazza and Alberto Folletti published a paper in Frontiers in Physics that used power spectrum analysis, a method often applied in cosmology, to compare the two networks. What they found was remarkable. When analyzing scales of 1 micrometer to 0.1 millimeter in the brain and 5 million to 500 million light years in the universe, the statistical similarity in how matter is distributed was striking. That's not just poetic, it's quantifiable. Even the proportion of active material is weirdly close. Neural cells make up about 25% of the brain's volume. The rest? Mostly water. In the universe, roughly 25% is visible matter. The rest is dark energy and dark matter. Coincidence? Maybe, but that number keeps popping up. Each galaxy in the cosmic web connects to around 4 others. Each neuron in that thin slice of brain connects to about 5. The numbers don't match perfectly, but the overall network behavior is eerily close. Think about that next time you're staring up at the night sky. So here's a question. If both systems follow similar physical rules, does that mean they emerged from the same principles of organization? Or is the universe just the largest scale mirror of something happening inside your own skull? Yeah, it's a lot. Take a breath. We're only just scratching the surface. The idea that the universe might be conscious isn't new. It goes back to ancient Greece. Philosophers like Plato imagined the cosmos as a living being, a world soul infused with intelligence. In the 16th century, Francesco Patrizzi revived this idea under a name that's still debated today, Panpsychism. The belief that consciousness is a basic feature of everything, not just brains. Fast forward to modern times, and this ancient view is being taken seriously again. Physicist Gregory Matloff of the New York City College of Technology suggests panpsychism could even explain dark matter, the mysterious 95% of the universe we can't see but know must be there. In his view, stars might adjust their motion based on a kind of proto-consciousness. He's studying a phenomenon called Parenago's discontinuity to test this. Sounds wild? Maybe. But it's testable, which already makes it more scientific than pure speculation. And it's not just Matloff. Theoretical physicist Bernard Heisch proposed in 2006 that consciousness could be a byproduct of the quantum vacuum empty space that still hums with energy. Then there's John Archibald Wheeler, the guy who coined black hole. He argued that reality is participatory, that the universe only exists in its current form because we observe it. Let that sit with you for a moment. Not only are we in the universe, but the universe might need us to realize itself. Kind of turns the whole "you are a speck of dust" thing on its head, doesn't it? So, if some of the most respected minds in physics are even entertaining the idea of a conscious universe, maybe we should too. Panpsychism isn't just a philosophical idea anymore. It's gaining traction in science. Thinkers like Philip Goff, a philosopher at Durham University, argue that consciousness isn't something that suddenly appears when brains get complex enough. Instead, it's always been here, embedded in the tiniest pieces of matter like electrons or quarks. Sounds far-fetched? Maybe. But even neuroscientists like Christoph Koch and Giulio Tononi are taking it seriously. Koch once said he'd consider panpsychism if all other explanations failed. Now, he and Tononi are working with models that treat consciousness as a fundamental feature of reality. In a 2015 research paper, they wrote that consciousness is intrinsic, fundamental, graded, and common, even in simple systems. Here's the weird part. If consciousness is truly spread out through the universe, then even a single particle might have a spark of awareness, not like thoughts or emotions, but a basic kind of experience. Take that idea to the extreme, and you start wondering, is your coffee mug a little bit conscious? Your phone? The screen you're reading this on? Of course, there are critics. Eric Holloway points out a dilemma. If a structure becomes conscious when it reaches a certain level of complexity, what happens when you remove just one particle? Does it instantly stop being conscious? That seems absurd. But if it doesn't, then maybe that one particle was conscious too. The line between absurd and revolutionary is thin, and panpsychism is walking it. So, what do you think? Does your microwave have feelings? Probably not. But if matter can feel anything at all, even in the faintest way, then we might be living in a universe that's more alive than we ever imagined. In quantum mechanics, just looking at something can change it. Literally, it's called the observer effect. A particle exists in multiple states until it's measured. Then, like magic, it collapses into one specific state. This isn't some sci-fi twist. It's baked into the math of the double-slit experiment, one of the most famous tests in physics. Back in the 20th century, physicist John Archibald Wheeler took this a step further. He proposed the participatory anthropic principle, the idea that the universe needs observers to exist in a definite state. In his words, we are not just passive viewers, but active participants in shaping reality. Roger Penrose, a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, also dove into this with his theory that quantum processes in the brain might be tied to consciousness. He worked with anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff to develop ORC-OR, orchestrated objective reduction, a model where consciousness arises from quantum effects inside microtubules, tiny structures in brain cells. So let's flip the question. If your observation can collapse a quantum wave function, what's observing you? Is there a bigger system collapsing reality at the universal scale? Even Hugh Everett's many worlds interpretation doesn't let you off the hook. It says all possible outcomes happen, but you only experience one. Why? Because your consciousness splits, following just one thread in a cosmic web of possibilities. It's mind-bending. But the takeaway is simple. In the quantum world, consciousness isn't just watching the universe. It might be helping build it. Integrated Information Theory, or IIT, might be the closest thing we have to a scientific attempt to measure consciousness. Developed by neuroscientist Giulio Tononi, IIT doesn't care whether a system is biological, artificial, or cosmic. It only asks, how much information is integrated within it? That value is called phi. The higher the phi, the higher the level of consciousness. So, your brain, off the charts. Neurons talking to neurons in deeply interconnected loops. A smartphone? Probably close to zero. But here's the wild part. If a rock, a thermostat, or even the internet has enough interconnected components, IIT says it might have some degree of consciousness. Not human-like, but real. Now, think bigger, much bigger. The universe is an absurdly complex network of matter, energy, and forces, all interacting across time and space. If phi scales with complexity, then could the universe be overflowing with consciousness? Experiments are being designed to test parts of IIT. Some researchers have proposed linking two mice brains and measuring whether a new combined consciousness emerges. If that works, human trials might follow. Yes, people voluntarily linking minds in a lab. Sounds like science fiction, but it's already in the blueprint stage. Tononi even describes consciousness as a shape in something called qualia space, a kind of internal geometry of experience. Imagine the sensation of biting into a lemon, that sharp, sour zing. According to IIT, it has a unique shape in your conscious field. So here's the question for you. If consciousness can be mapped and measured, what's stopping us from one day calculating the awareness of the universe itself? Maybe one day, we won't just wonder if the universe is conscious. We'll run the numbers and find out. If consciousness isn't limited to living brains, then where does it stop? Could massive systems like planets, stars, or even the universe itself be capable of thought? Let's start with complexity. Your brain, despite its 1.4 kilograms weight, holds about 86 billion neurons, each firing up to 200 times per second. But consider this. The observable universe contains over 100 billion galaxies, many arranged in filaments connected at nodes, just like neural pathways. The cosmic web is not just a poetic metaphor. It's a mathematically structured network. Now let's add integrated information theory back into the mix. If consciousness is a result of integrated information, then a large-scale system like the universe might not just contain information, it might experience it. It wouldn't think like a human, of course. It wouldn't care about pizza or deadlines, but it could have an internal model of itself, a kind of cosmic awareness operating on a scale we can't comprehend. Physicist Max Tegmark has also pushed this boundary. He proposed the idea of perceptronium, a hypothetical state of matter that not only processes information but is also aware of doing so. According to Tegmark, consciousness isn't a thing but a pattern, and patterns can emerge wherever complexity allows. So, here's something to consider. When we think of the universe as cold and lifeless, is that because it is, or because we expect consciousness to look like us? What if awareness simply scales with size, time, and structure? Sure, we can't ask the universe a question and get an answer, but maybe we already are the answer. Maybe consciousness isn't something we have, but something we are, a local ripple in a much larger thinking system. So, if the universe is thinking, what do you think it's thinking about? Defining consciousness is like trying to describe color to someone who's never seen. We know it exists. We're experiencing it right now, but pinning it down scientifically is maddeningly elusive. Even David Chalmers, the philosopher who coined the phrase the hard problem of consciousness in 1995, admitted there's still no good theory explaining why or how physical processes in the brain create subjective experience. Most scientific models can describe correlations, what parts of the brain light up when you feel pain, joy, or fear, but that doesn't explain why those signals feel like anything at all. Why isn't the brain just a silent machine processing inputs and outputs with no awareness? Some compare the brain to a computer, but that analogy only goes so far. Your laptop runs code. It doesn't wonder why. Consciousness is packed with intentionality, what philosophers call aboutness. Your thoughts are always about something. Rocks, thermostats, or even AIs don't seem to have this directed mental experience, at least not in any way we can measure. Christoph Koch, one of the leading consciousness researchers, once said, "Consciousness is a fundamental property, like mass or charge. If that's true, then maybe trying to reduce it to brain functions alone is missing the point entirely." And here's the paradox. The only thing we truly know for sure is that consciousness exists. Everything else, matter, energy, even time, comes to us through conscious experience. If we can't define the very thing that lets us define everything else, how do we make scientific sense of the universe? So, how would you define consciousness? Or is it one of those things you just know when you feel it? If the universe is conscious, even in the faintest way, the implications are enormous. We're not just talking about stars with feelings. This shifts the foundation of physics, ethics, even our sense of purpose. Start with physics. A conscious universe could mean that observation isn't a passive act, but a key function of how reality unfolds. John Wheeler's participatory universe suggests that conscious observers might literally create reality by collapsing quantum probabilities. It's not just strange. It could mean the cosmos is interactive, shaped in part by experience itself. Now, ethics. If consciousness is spread throughout nature, not just in humans or animals, but possibly in atoms, molecules, or fields, how do we decide what deserves moral consideration? Should we treat the Earth differently if it's not just alive, but aware? It's the kind of idea that fuels movements like deep ecology or spiritual philosophies like animism, which hold that everything in nature has some inner life. Then there's us. If consciousness is everywhere, then we're not isolated thinking machines. We're nodes in a vast conscious network. Some researchers even suggest this could explain psychic phenomena or collective intuition, not magic, but information flowing through a larger system. Roger Penrose, remember, linked quantum events in the brain to the fabric of the universe. If that connection is real, maybe our thoughts ripple outward in ways we don't yet understand. Maybe the universe listens. So let's turn it around. What if the universe isn't conscious because of us, but we're conscious because of it? It's a wild idea, sure, but what's wilder? Believing we're alone in a dead cosmos, or realizing we might be part of something vast, aware, and possibly trying to understand itself through us? So, is the universe actually conscious, or are we just projecting our own minds onto the stars? Psychologists call this anthropomorphism, our tendency to see human traits in non-human things. It's why we name hurricanes, talk to pets like toddlers, or see faces in clouds. Maybe seeing consciousness in the universe is just another case of that. After all, we're pattern seekers by design. When we look at the cosmic web and see neurons, maybe we're just seeing ourselves. But here's the twist. Some scientists think this projection might not be entirely wrong. David Chalmers has suggested that any system with the right structure might have some level of consciousness, even if it doesn't resemble ours. And integrated information theory doesn't care if the system is organic or mechanical. It only asks how much information is being integrated. If the cosmos scores high, maybe it does have a kind of awareness, just not one we'd recognize. Let's not forget, every major scientific shift has started with uncomfortable questions. The Earth isn't flat. It isn't the center of the universe. Time and space aren't fixed. So why should consciousness be confined to gray matter? Still, caution matters. As philosopher Thomas Metzinger warns, confusing models of mind with reality can lead us into deep metaphysical traps. We may crave meaning so badly that we impose it on a blank slate. But what if the slate isn't blank? What if the universe isn't a reflection of us, but we're a reflection of it? So here's your final question. Are we imagining a living universe, or finally starting to notice the one that's been alive all along?